Hello, trumpet players. This is video number 13, I believe, in the All-State Preparation series. We're going to be talking about the jazz etudes today. You should also be preparing yourself mentally for the classical stuff if you're going to do that too. But today we're going to talk about the effects that happen in the jazz etudes. So we have 5 different kinds of effects in the etudes this year. And, I go out of my way to put the effects in the etudes because I believe that that's one of the things that separates out people who can play jazz and people who can't. And I want, when I write these etudes, I don't write them for you as a student, I write them for the judges. I'm trying to help the judges do a better job of picking who should be in the all-state jazz band or at the region level in the all-region jazz band. Um, so yeah, I put the effects in the etude for them so they can tell who's played jazz before and who's not, and who can play it well. And the effects are part of that. Now, before we get into the individual effects, let's talk about the most important thing you can do for your effects. You know what? I'm kind of offended. I'm not normally offended, and maybe that's too harsh of a word. Um, but it bothers me when people think that because they're good at one thing that they're automatically good at another. And when we're talking about jazz versus classical, it bothers me when classical players just assume that they're going to be good jazz players just because they're good at playing classical music. And, you know, I'm just as bothered the other way around if that's what you're thinking. No, that's not a bias. If a jazz player is a great jazz player and assumes automatically that means he's going to be an okay classical player, that bothers me just as much. Okay? So the problem is, going both ways, is that the classical guys who try to play jazz thinking that they can already play jazz because they're such great players, have invested nothing into the jazz. And that's what's bothering me, right? If you're already a good player and you're just going to now add jazz to your portfolio or whatever, your list of skills, it's not going to go so well for you because the guys that really know jazz can tell that that's what you're doing, okay? And what I'm getting at right now is that you have to invest your time into becoming a better jazz player. And the number one most important thing you can do for that is listening to jazz music. The more listening you do, the more authentic your performance will sound. And this is just as true for the effects as it is for anything else, for style or no choices in your improv. All of this, we want to be familiar with the style because there's stuff I'm going to talk about here that you're not going to understand if you've never heard it before. And I don't mean, so we're talking about listening, right? I don't mean listening to my videos. Of course, I want you to do that, right? But no, I'm talking about listening to the bands that started this style in the first place. Listen to Duke Ellington, listening to Count Basie, listen to Woody Herman, all the bands from the big band era. You should be, today we have the ability to listen to whatever we want to listen to, right? Listen to the music from the swing era. You can also listen to some of the bands that are playing today, like the Big Fat Band and stuff like that, okay? But I still think, even if you're going to listen to that, and I'm not saying don't listen to that, but even if you're going to listen to that, you should still be listening to the music from the 40s and forward for this stuff. Now that I've said that, Let's move on to the exact effects in the etudes. Now, I think you should practice these separately from the music, but in a way that's still with the music. So, for example, when we do that first bend, the first effect happens in measure 3 in the first etude. It's a bend on the A. Now, what I want you to do is bend the A 10 times. In slow motion, okay? Do that 10 times. Then I want you to put fermatas on every note in that measure, and then bend the A. I'll show you what I mean, and do that 10 times. And the reason we're going to do that is because sometimes people can bend a note, but if you put that note in context, then bending isn't as easy anymore. So we're trying to put it in a long tone context, so that we have that, how we're getting to the A and how we're coming out of the A. So do that 10 times. And just to save time, I'm going to say do that for all the bends. All right? And people like to ask me, when do I speed it up? My answer is you don't. And it's kind of funny. I know that most people start slow, work it up. Start slow, work it up, right? I don't teach that. Keep it slow. Stay slow. And I don't have time to get into why I teach that in this video, maybe in another video later. But yes, I don't believe in like working it up now. Do it over and over and over and over again at these as fermatas on each note. Okay. So everywhere that you see bends in the etudes, I want you to approach it that way. Bend the note 10 times, then make a long tone study out of the measure. Bend that, play that 10 times. Okay, now let's look at what's next. We have a glissando in measure 20 on etude number 1. And this is just a finger glissando. It's the easiest effect we have. We're gonna, the note starts on F sharp. Right? So the figure is like this. Right? So that's probably the easiest effect out of all of them. Da 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 da. It's just a chromatic scale. So for that reason, we're moving on. The next thing that we have is a turn. Some people have trouble with the turns. The main thing to keep in mind with a turn is that it goes up before it goes down. So, and what I like to do is do it, well, we want to get the pitch first. Okay, so we're on a G. Okay, I got the wrong note at the end, but you get the point, right? We're gonna take smear the note up and then smear it down to the note we're going. Still missing the last note. Anyway, you get the idea, right? That way you can feel that smearing, that glissando going up, and then the glissando coming back. Wonderful way to use these buzzing devices. You know, I use these buzz aids only in preparing music. I do not use them when I'm doing exercises. I know that makes me a little bit different from most people that use these, but I don't think there's a need for them. In fact, I don't want when I'm doing mouthpiece buzz as part of my warm up, and I do. I don't want my trumpet attached to it, and there's reasons I won't go into, but yeah. So I normally use buzz aids to help me prepare music, and in this case, This is a great way to use that so that you can feel what it feels like to get those higher pitches and then come back down again. I'll do it one more time. I keep hitting a C at the end. Anyway, you get I hope you see how that works. Now we're going to go to the horn and play a lip slur starting there and then come to the B flat. There's that B flat. See what I'm doing? Now, when we do that in tempo, see that? That's what we want. Now, in this case, I'm using a completely lip version of the turn. There are different kinds of turns. I think this is the best one for that particular turn. The next one, let me see, then we're going to move on. If you have questions about this, go ahead and ask. We're going to come back to the turn at the end because I believe that my students should be doing the all-state cut down an octave until like 2 or 3 weeks before the auditions. And I have reasons for that, mostly for training your ears. So doing that last turn, we'll do that now. We'll come back to the shake. That last turn in the last measure, that's the measure 31 in Etude 1. Up an octave, you're going to do the same kind of turn that I just did, where it's mostly just lip. But when you're practicing it down an octave, that's not really going to work. So, see that? If you do it on here first, on the buzzing device, and then go back to here, the turn will be easier. Okay, so that's the first advice I have that might fit differently from what other people have told you. I'm full of those things, by the way. There's a lot of stuff that I teach that is not like everybody else. All right, so that pretty much covers the turns. You can do a half valve turn. Okay, so if that's what you need to do. Now we're going to talk about turns one more time at the end because Etude 3 is a different kind of turn. All right. Now let's back up measure 29 and let's talk about shakes. Now, this is the 4th or 5th time I tried to make this video and I had to keep doing it over and over again. Notice I looked over there. It's because 2 times it was because my recording software had stopped. One time, at least one time, it was because of the camera cutting out. And let me go check and make sure the camera's still recording. Yes, the camera is still recording. And another time it was because my levels were too high. Everything was distorted. So this is my 4th or 5th time doing this this video. And along the way, I've changed the way I'm approaching the shake, okay? So I first started off saying shake is not just a lip trill, but the problem is, and by the way, I've been teaching students along this time. I've been working on this video for over a week now, and working on the shakes with the students has like given me new insight. So I'm kind of glad that I did it so many times. It's a better video now for that. But instead of saying it's not just a lip trill, which is true, but you know, there's things that are theoretically true, and then there are things that are pedagogically true, right? Just because in theory it's not the same as a lip trill doesn't mean that's not how you start. So I've decided, yes, we want to start as a lip trill, and since a lip trill is a lip slur, we want to actually do lip slurs. And I think, you know, I rarely talk about stuff out of the Arbin book, but I think the Arbin book is, in terms of like easy access, I think this is the best book that we can go to learn how to do a shake. Let me show you. There's my Arbin book. I got the old version. On measure 44 in the slurs section, this would be number 22 in the slurs section. We have an exercise that starts slower and slower, okay? But you're working on your flexibility. And this number 22 and number 23 take you up to the register what you need to be doing this particular shake. All right? Now, I would also mention that if page 44 is too hard for you, then you need to get into it with the previous pages, starting at page 42, number 16, and working your way up to number 22. So right now we're just going to assume that you've got that down, and we're going to do this exercise. And if you follow this, you're going up in half steps until you get to the highest note, which here is B flat. That's where we're going, right? That we want to have a shake on a high B flat. Now, let me clarify again. This is not a shake. But I think it's safe to assume that if you can't do these exercises, you're not going to be able to shake. So now let's talk about, we're going to assume that if you haven't been able to do a shake, that you're going to now do page 44 in the Arbin book. Okay? That's just assumed now. Now we're going to say, what's the difference? Once you get to where you can do page 44 in the Arbin book, what's the difference between that and a shake? And, you know, sometimes the language that we use, I don't approve of it. Because I think jazz is a beautiful form of music, very, very full of expression and rich, and but some of the language we use is sort of self-defeating, right? So, but I'm going to use that language anyway now so that you understand what I'm saying, okay? In classical music, a lip trill is clean. You can hear distinct notes, right? You can hear those notes oscillating, all right? In jazz, we would say that the shake is dirty. We don't want to hear those notes popping, okay? We want to hear more of a smear. And to that end, once again, we can go back to this. After you've done page 44 in the Arbin book, go back now and try doing shakes just on the mouthpiece. See how that comes out. We're not going bati, bapi, papi, but it's not coming out real clean like that, like an opera singer or something, right? It's smearing from one note to the next, okay? That's really how a shake is going to be played. When we play a shake, it's not going to come out like a classical trill. We don't want those notes popping out like that. We want something more like, you hear the difference? Now I'm kind of going a little bit higher than the C. But you hear the difference in how clean versus dirty those two are. The trills are clean, the shake is dirty. Now, I don't believe in trying to play dirty. Okay? So now I'm starting to sound like I contradict myself. I'm not contradicting myself. I'm talking about where do you put your effort. Don't try to make it dirty. Instead, listen to the music. Listen to music that has shakes. Listen to music that has turns. Saturate your ears, saturate your life for a while with that kind of music. And when you do that, the dirtiness will just happen on its own subconsciously. You'll be speaking through the horn, and that's how the shake is going to come out. Now, this is a lot of time spent on a shake that's only a beat and a half long. at a pretty quick tempo, right? So this isn't so much for this, because I mean, think about it. If you don't play the shake, I think sometimes people have the wrong idea about how Allstate works. Like you get points, and there is a point system, but you don't get points off for mistakes. You don't get extra points for making it faster or whatever. It's not that kind of a point system. You know what? It's really, I won't go into that. But anyway, that's not how the contests work. So if you leave the shake out, or if you do a bad job on the shake, it's not a big deal. It's not going to mean that you're not going to make it if the rest of what you're doing is solid. Now, I'm not saying don't try to make it. Of course you want to try. I'm just saying it's just a beat and a half. So the reason why you should be doing this is not because you want to win Allstate. The reason you should be the reason you should be doing this, working on your shakes, is so that you can play better as a jazz player. If all you're doing is doing this so that you can win some contest, you won't do as well as the people who are trying to actually be better players. And I think that's something that's wrong with our society today. Anyway, let's move on. We have now a scoop in Etude 2 in measure 5. And what I suggest is start with first valve, but with a first valve, half valve combination. Watch this. And I'm going to be buzzing at about A. So, see that? So I'm smearing the note from the A to the D. It doesn't have to necessarily be A, or you could. I think the reason I do A is because I don't like those blurbs in there. So yes, you want to do half valve, but keep that first valve down. And another thing worth mentioning is that scoop into that note is going to come out of the previous measure, rhythmically speaking. So that whole note in the previous measure, in measure 4, is going to be cut. Okay? See how soon I started? And you want to keep that in mind. You don't want to shorten the scoop, but you also don't want to add another beat or so to the previous measure. All right? Now, what's next? So we've already covered bends. We've already covered turns. What we've covered about the turns, we'll cover what we've already done. But now, in the last etude, in Etude 3, we have a different kind of turn. It's actually easier, but we're going to talk about that. So this is what I would call a finger turn, where you actually play notes. That's the turn in measure 4. I'm going from D up to E, back to D, then to the C sharp. You see that? And it happens again in measure 15. A, B, A, G sharp, okay? Well, now you know everything you need to know about the effects in these etudes. I hope it helped. And I'm looking at the camera and hoping that the camera actually went through so I can finally post this video. But I think it was a good thing that it took so long, because it really is a lot better video today than what I did the other days, okay? So thank you for your patience. I know some of you have been waiting for this. I promised it, and it kept taking longer and longer and longer. All right, so if you have any questions, please ask below. And other than that, God bless you, and we will see you on the next video.